Chapter 6. Technically, as it were, Antoinette wasn't so wrong. By the time Maigret got to the Cochin Hospital on Faubourg Saint-Jacques, Etienne Gouin had already left for the Saint-Joseph Clinic in Passy, together with his assistant. Maigret had expected that, since it was after 11, but he wasn't here to see the professor. Perhaps when it came down to it, he didn't want to meet him face to face just yet, although he didn't quite know why. Gouin's department was on the second floor, and Maigret had to negotiate with the office staff before he was given permission to go upstairs. He found the long corridor more animated than he'd expected, the nurses under great pressure. The one he approached as she came out of one of the rooms, looking less busy than the others, was a middle-aged woman with already white hair. "Are you the head nurse?" "The head nurse for the day shift?" He told her who he was, and that he would like to ask her a few questions. "What about?" He hesitated to admit that it was about the professor. She had led him to the door of a small office, but didn't invite him in. "Is that the operating theatre I can see at the end of the corridor?" "One of the operating theatres, yes." "What happens when a surgeon spends part of the night in the hospital?" "I don't understand. You mean when a surgeon comes here to perform an operation?" "No. Unless I'm mistaken, they're sometimes here for other reasons. If they're afraid there might be complications, for example, or else to wait for the result of their operation." "That does happen. What of it?" "Where do they go?" "That depends." "On what?" "On how long they stay. If they aren't here for long, they come to my office, or walk up and down the corridor. But if they have to wait for several hours, in case an emergency operation is necessary, they go upstairs to the interns section, where there are 2 or 3 rooms at their disposal." "Do they use the stairs?" "Either that or the lift. The rooms are on the 4th floor. Most of the time, they rest until they're called." She was clearly wondering what these questions were in aid of. The newspapers hadn't mentioned Gouin's name in connection with the death of Lulu. It was likely that nobody here knew of his relations with the girlfriend of Pierrot the musician. "I don't suppose I can speak to someone who was here the night before last." "After 8 o'clock?" "Yes. I should have said the night of Monday to Tuesday." "The nurses who are here now are all like me. They belong to the day team. It may be that one of the interns was on duty. Wait a moment." She went into 2 or 3 rooms, and at last came back with a tall, bony, red-haired young man wearing thick spectacles. "Someone from the police," she said, and went and sat down in her office, but didn't ask them in. Maigret introduced himself. "Detective Chief Inspector Maigret." "I thought I recognized you. What would you like to know?" "Were you here on the night of Monday to Tuesday?" "Most of the night, yes. The professor operated on a child on Monday afternoon. It was a difficult case, and he asked me to keep a close eye on the patient." "Didn't he come himself?" "He spent most of the evening in the hospital." "Was he on this floor with you?" "He got here just after 8 with his assistant. We went in together to see the patient and stayed there, looking out for something that didn't in fact happen. I don't suppose you want me to go into technical details?" "I probably wouldn't understand a thing. So, you stayed with the patient for an hour or 2?
"Less than an hour. Mademoiselle Decaux insisted on the professor getting some rest, because he'd performed an emergency operation the previous night. In the end, he went upstairs to have a lie-down."
"How was he dressed?"
"He wasn't expecting to operate, and in fact he didn't have to. He was still in his normal everyday clothes."
"Did Mademoiselle Decaux keep you company?"
"Yes. We chatted. The professor came down just before 11. I'd been in to see the patient every quarter of an hour. We went back together, and as the patient seemed out of danger, the professor decided to go home."
"Did he leave with Mademoiselle Decaux?"
"They almost always arrive and leave together."
"So, from 9:15 to 11 o'clock, Gouin was alone on the 4th floor?"
"Alone in a room, in any case. I still don't see why you're asking these questions."
"Could he have come down without your seeing him?"
"By the stairs, yes."
"Could he also have passed the desk downstairs without anybody noticing?"
"Possibly. Nobody pays any attention to doctors going in and out, especially at night."
"I'm very grateful. Do you mind telling me your name?"
"Monsuy. Raoul Monsuy."
This was where Madame Gouin's sister hadn't been so wrong. Physically speaking, Etienne Gouin could have left the hospital and had himself driven to Avenue Carnot and back without anyone noticing his absence.
"I don't suppose I'm allowed to know why,"
the intern began, just as Maigret was about to walk away. Maigret shook his head. He went downstairs and crossed the courtyard to the little black car and the police driver waiting at the curb. When he got to Quai des Orfèvres, He didn't think of casting his usual glance through the windows of the waiting room. Before entering his office, he passed through the inspector's room, where Lucas stood up to talk to him. "I have some information from Béziers." Maigret had almost forgotten about Louise Fillon's father. "The man died of cirrhosis of the liver 3 years ago. Before that, he worked on and off in the town abattoir." Nobody had yet come forward to claim Louise's inheritance, if there was one. "Someone named Louis has been waiting for you next door for the last half hour." "A musician?" "I think so." "Bring him to my office." Maigret went in, took off his hat and coat, sat down in his place, and picked up one of the pipes arranged in front of the desk blotter. A few moments later, the accordion player was admitted, looking uneasy, peering about him before sitting down as if expecting a trap. "You can leave us, Lucas." And to Louis, "If you're going to be here for a while, I advise you to take your coat off." "There's no need. He phoned me." "When?" "This morning, just after 9. He was observing Maigret hesitantly. "Are we still on?" "Are you referring to what I said yesterday?" "Of course. If Pierrot's innocent, he has nothing to fear." "He didn't kill her. He would have told me. I did what you asked. I told him you were ready to meet him where he wanted, and that then he'd be free again." "Let's be clear about this. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. If I think he's innocent, he'll be entirely free. If I think he's guilty, or if I have any doubts, I guarantee I won't take advantage of our encounter. In other words, I'll let him go. But then the search will resume." "That's pretty much what I told him." "And what did he say?" "That he was ready to see you. He has nothing to hide." "Would he come here?" "Provided he isn't besieged by reporters and photographers. Provided also he can get here without the cops jumping him." Louis was speaking slowly, weighing his words, without taking his eyes off Maigret. "Could it be done soon?" Maigret asked. He checked the time. It wasn't yet midday. Between midday and 2 o'clock, the offices of Quai des Orfèvres were quiet and almost deserted. It was the time of day Maigret chose as often as possible when he had to set up a difficult interrogation. "He could be here in half an hour." "In that case, listen to me. I assume he has pocket money. Let him take a taxi and ask to be dropped outside the prison on Quai de l'Horloge. Not many people pass that way. Nobody will pay any attention to him. One of my inspectors will wait for him at the door and bring him to me through the interior of the Palais de Justice." Getting to his feet, Louis looked at Maigret again for a moment or two, conscious of the responsibility he was assuming on behalf of his friend. "I believe you," he sighed at last. "Half an hour tops." When he had left, Maigret phoned the Brasserie Dauphine to ask for some food to be brought up. "Enough for 2 people and 4 glasses of beer." Then he called his wife and told her he wouldn't be home for lunch. Finally, just to be sure, he went upstairs to the commissioner's office, preferring to inform him about the experiment he was going to attempt. "Do you think he's innocent?" "Until proven otherwise. If he was guilty, he'd have no reason to come and see me, or else he's tougher than I thought." "What about the professor?" "I don't know. I still have no idea." "Have you talked to him?" "No. Janvier had a brief conversation with him." The commissioner sensed it was useless to ask questions. Maigret had that heavy, stubborn air about him that everyone at headquarters knew so well. At such times, he was even less talkative than usual. "The girl was pregnant," he simply added, as if it was bothering him. He went back to the inspector's room. Lucas had not yet gone to lunch. "I don't suppose the taxi's been found." "There's no chance we'll find it before tonight. The drivers who work nights are all in bed." "It might not be a bad idea to look for 2 taxis." "I don't understand." "It's quite possible that earlier in the evening, just before 10, the professor had himself driven to Avenue Carnot and then back to the hospital." "I'll have it checked." He looked round for the inspector he would send to wait outside the prison and take charge of Pierrot, and chose young Lapointe. "Go and stand on the pavement opposite the prison. After a while you'll see someone get out of a taxi. It'll be the saxophone player." "Is he giving himself up?" "He's coming to talk to me. Be nice to him. Try not to scare him. Bring him to me by way of the little courtyard and the corridors of the Palais de Justice. I promised him he wouldn't encounter any reporters." There were almost always some prowling in the corridors, but it was easy to get rid of them for a moment. By the time Maigret got back to his office, the beer and sandwiches were waiting for him on a tray. He drank one of the beers, but didn't start to eat, and then spent a quarter of an hour standing by the window, watching the barges glide by on the grey water. At last, he heard the footsteps of 2 men. He opened the door and signaled to Lapointe that he could go. "Come in, Piero." The musician, pale, with bags under his eyes, was visibly upset. Just as his friend had done, he began by looking around him like a man expecting a trap. "There's only you and me in the room," Maigret reassured him. "You can take your coat off. Give it to me." He placed it on the back of a chair. "Are you thirsty?" He handed him a glass of beer and took one for himself. "Sit down. I suspected you'd come."
"Why?"
His voice was hoarse, the voice of someone who hasn't slept all night and has smoked one cigarette after another. 2 fingers of his right hand had brown tobacco stains on them. He was unshaven. Whatever it was he'd gone to earth, he probably hadn't had the chance to shave. "Have you eaten?"
"I'm not hungry."
He seemed younger than his age, and he was so nervous it was tiring to look at him. Even seated, he was still trembling from head to foot.
"You promised,"
he began. "I'll keep my word."
"I came of my own free will."
"You did the right thing."
"I didn't kill Lulu."
Suddenly, when Maigret was least expecting it, he burst into tears. It was clearly the first time he had let himself go since he'd learned of his girlfriend's death. He wept like a child, hiding his face with both hands, and Maigret was careful not to interrupt him. Basically, ever since he had found out from the newspaper in the little restaurant on Boulevard Barbet that Lulu was dead, he hadn't had time to think about her, but only about the threat hanging over him. Overnight, he had become a hunted man, his freedom, if not his head, at stake with every passing minute. Now that he was at Quai des Orfèvres, face to face with the police, who had been his nightmare, he was suddenly letting himself go.
"I swear I didn't kill her,"
he repeated. Maigret believed him. He didn't look or sound like a guilty man. Louis had been right the previous day when he had talked about his friend as a weak man who acted tough. With his fair hair, his bright eyes, his almost chubby face, it wasn't a butcher's boy he made you think of, but an office clerk. You could imagine him strolling on the Champs-Élysées with his wife on a Sunday afternoon.
"Do you really believe it was me?"
No.
"So why did you tell that to the papers?"
I never said a word to the reporters. They write what they want. And the circumstances...
"I didn't kill her."
Calm down now. You can smoke. Piero's hand was still shaking as he lit his cigarette. There's one question I have to ask you before anything else. When you went to Avenue Carnot on Monday night, was Louise still alive?
Piero opened his eyes wide. "Of course," he exclaimed.
It was probably the truth. Otherwise he wouldn't have waited to read the paper at midday the following day to take fright and run away. When she phoned you at the Grelot, did you have any idea what she had to say to you?
"No, I had no idea. She was in a nervous state and wanted to talk to me right away."
What did you think?
"That she'd made up her mind."
To do what?
"To give it all up."
Give up what exactly?
"The old man."
Had you asked her to?
"I'd been begging her to come and live with me for the past 2 years."
He added, as if challenging Maigret, as if challenging the whole world.
"I love her."
He wasn't being assertive. On the contrary, he spoke haltingly. Are you sure you don't want a bite to eat? This time Piero automatically grabbed a sandwich, and Maigret took another. It was better this way. Both were eating, and that relaxed the atmosphere. No noise could be heard from the offices, except the tapping of a typewriter somewhere. Had Lulu ever before called you to Avenue Carnot when you were at work?
"No, not to Avenue Carnot. Once when she was still living in Rue de Lafayette, and she suddenly felt ill. It was only a bad case of indigestion, but she was afraid. She was always afraid of dying."
Because of that word, and the images it evoked, his eyes grew wet again, and he paused for a while before biting into his sandwich. What did she say to you on Monday night? Hold on, though, before you answer my question. Tell me if you have a key to the apartment.
"No."
Why not?
"I don't know. No reason. I didn't go there often, and when I did, she was always there to open the door."
So you rang the bell and she opened the door?
"I didn't have to ring the bell. She was listening out for me, and she opened the door as soon as I got out of the lift."
I thought she was in bed.
"She had been. She must have been in bed when she phoned me. She got up just before I arrived. She was in a dressing gown."
Did she seem normal?
"No."
What kind of state was she in?
"Hard to say. She looked as if she'd been doing a lot of thinking and was about to make a decision. I got scared when I saw her."
Scared of what?
The musician hesitated. "You might as well know," he grunted in the end. "I was scared because of the old man."
I assume you mean the professor.
"Yes, I kept expecting him to decide to get a divorce and marry Lulu."
Was it on the cards?
If it was, she never told me.
Did she want him to marry her?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Did she love you?
I think she did.
Aren't you sure?
I don't suppose women are like men.
What do you mean? He did not clarify his thought, perhaps because he was unable to, and merely shrugged his shoulders.
She was a poor girl,
he finally murmured as if to himself. The mouthfuls went down his throat with difficulty, but he continued mechanically to eat. Where did she sit when you arrived?
She didn't sit down. She was too nervous to sit. She started walking up and down and said without looking at me, "I have important news to tell you." Then, as if she couldn't hold it in any longer, "I'm pregnant."
Did she seem pleased?
She didn't seem either pleased or upset.
Did you think the child was yours? He did not dare answer, but from his attitude it was clear that for him it was obvious. What did you say?
Nothing. It had a strange effect on me. I wanted to take her in my arms.
Wouldn't she let you?
No. She kept walking up and down, talking to herself, saying things like, "I wonder what I'm going to do. This changes everything. It may be very important. If I tell him—"
She meant the professor?
Yes. She didn't know if she could tell him the truth or not. She wasn't sure how he'd react.
And now Piero, who had finished his sandwich, sighed despondently.
It's hard to explain. I remember the smallest details, and at the same time it's vague. I never imagined it would happen like that.
What had you hoped?
That she'd throw herself in my arms and tell me she'd finally made up her mind to come with me.
Had the idea occurred to her?
Maybe it had. I'm almost sure it had. She wanted it. In the beginning, when she came out of hospital, she claimed that she was obliged out of gratitude to act as she did.
She felt indebted to Gouin.
He saved her life. I think he spent more time treating her than any other of his patients.
Did you believe it?
Believe what?
Did you believe in Lulu's gratitude?
I told her she wasn't obliged to keep being his mistress. He had plenty of others.
Do you think he was in love with her?
He was definitely attached to her. I guess she'd got under his skin.
What about you?
I loved her.
When all's said and done, why did she send for you?
I've wondered that too.
It was about 5:30 that she found out for sure at a doctor's in Rue des Dames that she was pregnant. Couldn't she have seen you then?
Yes. She knew where I usually have dinner before going to the Grello.
She went back home. Later on, between 7:30 and 8, the professor dropped in on her.
She told me.
Did she also tell you if she'd announced the news to him?
She hadn't told him anything.
She ate something and went to bed. It's likely she didn't sleep. And about 9 o'clock, she phoned you.
I know. I thought about all that and tried to understand, but I still don't. The only thing I know for sure is that I didn't kill her.
Answer this question frankly, Piero. If on Monday evening she told you she didn't want to see you again, would you have killed her? The young man looked at him, and a vague smile rose to his lips.
Do you want me to put a noose around my own neck?
You aren't obliged to answer.
I might have killed her. But first of all, she didn't tell me that. Secondly, I didn't have a gun.
You had one the last time you were arrested.
That was years ago, and the police didn't give it back to me. I haven't had one since. I was going to add that I wouldn't have killed her that way.
How would you have gone about it?
I don't know. I might have hit her without realizing what I was doing, or put my hands round her throat.
He stared at the wooden floor at his feet, and paused before adding in a less distinct voice,
But maybe I wouldn't have done anything. There are things like that that you think about when you're falling asleep, but that you never actually do.
Did you ever think about killing Lulu as you were falling asleep?
Yes.
Because you were jealous of Gouin. He shrugged again, which presumably meant that that wasn't the whole story, that the truth was more complicated than that. Before Gouin, you were already Louise Fillon's boyfriend, and unless I'm mistaken, you didn't stop her from being on the game.
That's different.
Maigret was making an effort to get as close to the truth as possible, but he realized that absolute truth was elusive. You never took advantage of the professor's money.
Never,
he retorted so sharply with an abrupt movement of the head that he seemed on the verge of losing his temper. Did Louise ever give you presents?
Nothing but trifles, a ring, ties, socks.
And you accepted them?
I didn't want to hurt her feelings.
What would you have done if she'd left Gouin?
We'd have lived together.
Like before?
No.
Why?
Because I never liked that.
What would you have lived on?
First of all, I earn a living.
Not much of one, from what Louis told me.
Not much of one, maybe, but I wasn't planning to stay in Paris.
Where did you plan to go?
Anywhere. South America, Canada.
He was even younger in character than Maigret thought. Lulu wasn't keen on the plan.
Sometimes she was tempted, and occasionally she even promised that we'd leave in a month or two.
I assume it was in the evening that she spoke like that.
How do you know?
And in the morning she saw things in a clearer light.
She was afraid.
Of what?
Of starving to death.
They were finally getting there. There was a resentment in Piero that showed through in spite of him. Do you think it was because of that fear that she stayed with the professor?
Maybe.
She was often hungry in her life, wasn't she?
Just like me,
the young man retorted defiantly. Only she was afraid of being hungry again.
What are you trying to prove?
Nothing yet. I'm just trying to understand. The one thing we know for sure is that on Monday night someone shot Lulu at close range. You say it wasn't you, and I believe you.
Are you certain you believe me?
Piero murmured mistrustfully. Until proved otherwise.
And you let me go?
As soon as we finish this conversation.
You'll call off your search? Order your men to leave me alone?
I'll even allow you to go back to your job at the Grelo.
And the newspapers?
I'll issue a press release in a while saying that you came to the police judiciaire of your own free will, and that after you'd explained yourself you were allowed to go free.
That doesn't mean I'm not still under suspicion.
I add that there's nothing pointing to you.
That's something at least.
Did Lulu own a gun?
No.
You said just now that she was afraid.
Of life, of poverty, but not of people. She wouldn't have needed a gun.
You stayed just over a quarter of an hour at her place on Monday night.
I had to get back to the Grelo. Plus, I didn't like being there when the old man could come in at any minute. He has a key.
Did he ever do that?
Once.
What happened?
Nothing. It was an afternoon at a time when he never came to see Lulu. We'd arranged to meet in town at 5, but something happened that stopped me going. As I was in the area, I went up to see her. We were in the living room, chatting, when we heard the key turn in the lock. He came in. I didn't hide. He didn't look at me. He advanced into the middle of the room with his hat on his head and waited without saying a word. It was a bit as if I wasn't a human being.
When all's said and done, you still don't know exactly why Lulu sent for you on Monday night.
I assumed she needed to talk to someone.
How did your conversation end?
She said, I wanted you to know. I have no idea what I'm going to do. In any case, nothing's visible yet. You think it over too.
Did Lulu ever talk to you about marrying the professor? He seemed to search in his memory.
Once, when we were in a restaurant on Boulevard Rochois, and we were talking about a girl we both knew who had just got married, she said, if it was only up to me, he'd get a divorce and marry me.
Did you believe that?
He might have done it. At that age, men are capable of anything.
Maigret was unable to hold back a smile. I won't ask you where you've been hiding since yesterday afternoon.
I wouldn't tell you. Am I free to go?
Completely.
And your men won't arrest me when I leave?
To be honest, you'd do well to spend an hour or two in the vicinity without being too conspicuous to give me time to issue orders. There's a brasserie on Place Dauphine where you'll be left alone.
Give me my coat.
He seemed wearier than when he'd come in, because he was no longer living on his nerves. And I think you should also find a room in the first hotel you come to, and get some sleep.
I wouldn't be able to sleep.
In the doorway he turned.
What are they going to do with her?
Maigret understood. If nobody claims the body, he began.
Am I allowed to claim it?
If there's no family.
Will you tell me how to go about it?
He wanted to give Lulu a decent funeral. Their friends from the dance hall in the Barbet district would probably follow the hearse. Maigret watched his weary figure move away down the long corridor. He slowly closed the door, stood motionless for a while in the middle of his office, and at last headed for the inspector's room.